Hi there, my name is Dr. Chris Atchison-Clare. I'm the director of CILMAR, that's Purdue University's Center for Intercultural Learning, Mentorship, Assessment, and Research. And I'm doing this series of videos that basically walks you through the slides that come with various activities. These are not meant for student consumption or for the learners directly, but really are more of kind of an instructor's manual for facilitators to get a little bit of a guide to how to use them. Okay, so this one that I'm doing today is on the needs and beliefs about self and others activity that is in the Intercultural Learning Hub. This activity, it's based on an activity from Brown and Kasilka, but Jennifer Weinel and I, a colleague who we have developed training materials for the Beliefs, Events, and Values Inventory, which is an intercultural assessment that we train people to be administrators of. So we have developed a version of this activity that we use specifically for that training. I think it has uses in other contexts, and so I wanted to put it into the Hubicle in case others found it useful, in courses or in other programs where there's a need to talk about the relationship between who we are and what we believe and what our human needs are and who we develop as people. So it's a self-awareness activity for sure. And I think works best in context where you have people who aren't afraid to talk and be vulnerable about their past experiences. So probably not a group of 100 people, I think it works best with smaller groups and people who are not afraid to share deeply about who they are and what experiences that they've had. So this activity starts out with just with some definitions because it's important to get everybody on the same page, and that works really well in a training context because, you expect to have some of that more lecture-oriented or approach in the session. So if you are doing a more interactive or student-centered kind of experience and you can find a better way to sort of get everybody on the same page about what these things mean, then I think that's fantastic. Usually when I do this, I just talk through some of the points here. I don't read these bullet points word for word or anything, but I talk through some of the definitions so that people all share an understanding of what we say or what we mean when we say things like needs or beliefs or values. Okay. So I show this picture of needs. This is from the work of Craig Shealy. And most people are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So this is sort of a refinement and extension of that based on more recent research. I like it because it's a little more complex and nuanced than the Maslow's hierarchy. You can sort of group these into 3 sets of 3. So there's 9 here, and they're very nicely alliterated with A's. But I think of those first 3 at the bottom as more foundational, and then there's a sort of middle set, and then this top set that's more abstract and, so more about, deeper purpose and those kinds of things. So the bottom 3 are, I think, more physical and internal. The middle 3 are more social, and then you return to the personal again at the top, but they're less physical. Like I said, more abstract. So I talk about these for a little bit, and then I move on further into the self, definition of the self. And then there's a little bit of explanation of the theory that underlies this instrument. Again, if you're not doing anything that has to do with the Bevy instrument, I don't think it's really necessary that you go into a lot of detail about EI theory. But the basic premise here is that we develop into the beings that we are, who are individuals as well as cultural beings, through a process in childhood and in adolescence and early adulthood, a process in which we come to form and construct beliefs about ourselves and about other people and about the world around us through the interactions that we have with other people and with the world around us. And those interactions are framed around getting our needs met. So we express our needs out into the world around us, and as other people meet our needs or don't, and the ways in which they meet our needs and the willingness with which they meet our needs gives us a lot of information, and then we use that information to construct beliefs and value systems. Okay. So that's the basic concept of EI theory. Beliefs and values, again, more definitions here. If you're not a scholar that's familiar with EI theory, that's perfectly fine. I think this set of slides, and this is linked here, so you can just hyperlink to the website. I'm not going to do that now, but this is a set of slides that I think does a really great job of walking people through what that process, that developmental process is like. And the reason why we start this activity with EI theory and that sort of theoretical foundation is because it's really difficult for people to connect the dots in the activity in the way that we're asking them to without understanding that we are who we are because of all these interactions that we've had over time and what we've learned from those. Okay, so again, it gives us the theory that we can then apply back to analysis of our experiences. All right, oops, I didn't mean to open that. Okay, so here's the activity itself. And again, based on the Brown and Kasilka, we've just added an additional layer to this activity. So the first 3 steps that you're going to see here are from that Brown and Kasilka activity that's been adapted. And then the last bit of this, connecting back to specifically to needs, is what I think sets this apart and really ties it in well with EI theory and with the Bevy instrument. So step 1, you're just basically going to get folks to identify a whole bunch of facets or aspects of themselves as cultural beings. Sometimes you have to stress, especially with younger learners, you have to stress, we're not looking for adjectives here. Don't write things like funny or, outgoing or whatever, or things that they like soccer or something like that. What you want here is communities that they belong to and labels that they claim. Okay, so aspects of their identity. So you can stress that they need to put nouns and nouns that refer to a layer of their identity or a group that they belong to. Okay. The second step, ask them to pick one of those aspects of who they are and then dig into the environmental or contextual factors that helped shape that identity for them. So if they pick gender, for example, as is in this example, then education, family, friends, media, workplace, travel, all these different areas of their life helped shape who they became as a gendered person. Okay, so they can come up with lots of other examples if they want to. But again, they're going to pick one of these before they move on to the next step. Okay, so this is where the Brown and Kasilka activity starts. It asks them to, or stops. It asks them to think about very specific memories that they have that contributed to their identity and their sense of who they are in relationship to other people. So with education as the context and gender as the layer of identity, here are some examples that people have said or might say. It could be things that they heard over and over growing up from their family. It could be things that they witnessed in media. It could be experiences that they had in school. It could be all sorts of different kinds of memories. Okay, it doesn't even have to be verbal. It could be images. So this next step, I think, is the hardest for people to connect the dots, but I think it is absolutely the most important. Okay, what we ask is for people to go back to that EI theory and think about, what does needs have to do with anything? Okay, what needs did they have when they had those experiences? How were the needs met or not met? And then how did that shape the beliefs and values that became a part of the structure of who they are based on those experiences and the information that they got from them, depending on how their needs were met. Okay, this is really complex stuff. So not something I would try with, adolescents probably. I think it takes a certain willingness to do some deep reflection as well as a willingness to share in dialogue because, I think there's value in hearing what other people say and articulating for others your own experiences. So again, probably well suited for university students, graduate students in particular, for adults who are reflective and willing to do this kind of work. So that's all the slides. The wonderful piece of that activity is really in the debriefing. So it's after all that is finished. Those are just the instructions. The really rich and valuable piece of that activity is when you get people talking afterwards. And those are just the prompts for their thinking prior to the talking, okay? So I'm going to stop there now that I've gone through those slides, and just encourage you, if you use an activity like this one, to review any activities that you're familiar with or have tried on the Hubbicle, so that other people can benefit from the wisdom of your experience. You can red flag things for people. You can talk about which groups things are a really great fit for, and any other experiences that you have. Also, like in this case, if you have adapted an activity, please send us your modifications, and we would be happy to post your slides or your handouts or anything else that gives people ideas for how they may also adapt, or save them some work if they have a similar context to apply it to. So thank you very much. I'll see you in the next video.